Welcome to the Mad Love Your Life show. I'm Mary D, the Joy Catalyst, here to be your host and transformation guide. Mad Love is about the mad, making a difference, and love is what we serve up to live a delicious life. My intention is to help you spark new ideas, break limiting beliefs, and align with your deepest dreams and desires. Get ready for laughter, inspiration, and finding your inner roar in every show. Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. It is so great to be with you back in the studio and back with a phenomenal live guest. This guest is someone that I have actually wanted to have on the show for a while now. My team and I, if you know us, will know that we love the intersection of business and spirituality just because that's life. Like, we are these beautiful souls walking through this human experience. And my guest today is someone we're going to talk to a little bit about miracles and life, and it's going to be really juicy and really good. So tune in and just know that we also are doing an extended version today, so you can catch some unique content over there on the Mad Love Your Life show YouTube channel. With that, and without further ado, I want to introduce you to my guest. Her name is Robin Duncan, and Robin is a spiritual lecturer, an author, an executive producer, and a host of A Course in Miracles.tv. She offers spiritual life coaching, professional training, and certification in holistic health. Robin has helped thousands of people to release from limiting fear-based thinking, to reclaim their spiritual power, and learn how to expect miracles as part of daily living. She's an international instructor for hypnotherapy, for advanced hypnosis, spiritual counseling, EFT with the Source technique, regression guided imagery, and sound therapy. Through her practical, user-friendly teachings, Robin is known for helping people get to the bottom of what is holding them back. In the mid-90s, Robin left her CFO position and made a full transition into spiritual development and holistic health. And during her 22-year finance career, she also held positions as CFO, CPA, Director of Finance, Internal Audit, and other senior staff positions with Fortune 500 companies. You will also find a great free gift from her, which is it's a download of her Miracles in Prayer book at freeprayerbook.com. So make sure you grab that today. And with that, we're going to hop right in. And I'm just going to say, Robin, welcome to the show. We're super excited about interviewing you today and having you here with us. So thank you for taking the time.
Hi, Mary. It's so great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's just jump in. Talk to me about, what do you know now that you wish you had known before you ever started in the spiritual holistic coaching space?
If I have to narrow that down, what do I know now? Oh my gosh, it feels like my cup is so full of what has been given to me in so many wonderful ways. So I would say, just going back to when I first entered that career space, and always trying to do the right thing and get things right. And I was always concerned, I think, way too much with what other people thought and what was going on for them, and making sure they were happy. I wouldn't say I was a people pleaser, but I was always very concerned with what was going on for others, and I think less concerned about what was going on for me. And so I would say that there were times that I decided against myself. And I think one of the things that I've learned and would tell my younger self is, never do that. Never decide against yourself because of your circumstances or what somebody says or how things look around you. So I would give myself that wisdom, earlier on in my life.
Yeah, I love that. I really feel like part of that realization can come for many of us with age and experience, right? Like, there's a portion of time where we're learning from our parents, or we're learning as a young, impressionable child how the world works. And sometimes we learn that the world works through rewards. And so we tend to create our behavior around that, right? Which is like, oh, well, if I keep doing more for the teacher, or if I keep making good grades, if I keep XYZ, then I'm going to now get the little gold star, or I'm going to get permission, or I'm going to get XYZ. So I think that's beautiful advice, because it's for sure one that I've come to as my own advice for myself, looking back and seeing how do we actually put the pause button on and recognize that there's so much more available for us, and we don't also have to continue in this place where we're constantly running on an empty cup. And that's such a big piece of it. Do you feel like that realization came to you through like just over time, or was there a big thing that happened? Like, did you have a, like, for me, I had breast cancer at 40 and I got sued by the FTC. So those two big things happening at once were just huge for me to recognize like how much stress was showing up in my life and how I was, in this hustle. And it was like, why? Like, what am I doing all of this for? And so I really had this wake up call around, why is achievement so important to me? And then can I also really get realigned with what my values actually are and start, living that way? So is there a big thing that happened to you, or is this just life?
Yes, it's the school of hard knocks, right? So I would say it's funny how you said there were two things, and it was the same for me that I was finishing up a 16-year divorce, 16-year marriage that ended in divorce. And then my whole office closed down unexpectedly, and I was laid off all in the same month. And it just hit me like a freight train. So you go from trying to spin all those plates in the air and do what you know how to do, and then find all these pieces on the ground, and you're thinking that the best thinking that you have brought you to where you are, and then here you are and it's quite a mess. So I think those experiences we have really get us to turn inward and say, what's going on, and where did I go off the rails, that this is where I am. So a lot
Yeah.
of self reflection began in that month
So
specifically.
good. So good. And did you have coaches or mentors along the way, or was this just a download?
Well, I would say definitely my biggest coach is Jesus. So I talk to him
Mhm.
all the time,
Mhm.
and but I have had some beautiful teachers along the way. But it was pretty casual because when I was going through my spiritual journey, there wasn't that much out there. I think there were a lot of people on that path, but it wasn't as public, and there weren't as many places to go. There weren't options, and so there were
Yeah.
people that certainly influenced me, my life, and I'm so grateful for that. But I almost feel like I had to jump off my own cliff and hit all the bushes on the way down. So
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I think all of us have a few scars from jumping and again hitting the bushes on the way down. When you say that you were in touch with Jesus, or that Jesus was an influence for you, talk to me about that, because I think that especially here in America, we are predominantly a Christian nation, more so than many other places you go. I remember going to Asia for the first time and landing in Thailand and being like, wow, the air here is just different. And then it's a very Buddhist country, and now kind of split between Muslims and Buddhists, and it's so different. It's just so different because they're not dictated by some of the same sort of core values that we maybe as a nation you also see show up. So I'm so curious, because I feel like that verbiage means something different to everyone. And so what does that mean for you when you say that like you have some influence there with Jesus?
it's become more personal over time. I've always been a believer in God, and it wasn't until that crazy time of my life that I really had to draw in closer. And it was my husband that actually put a Course in Miracles book into my hands the first time. And he would just pray so beautifully. And I thought, how do you pray like that? And honestly, I didn't know. And he said, oh, it's just this book I'm reading. And I said, well, I need to get a copy of that book. And it turns out that it was authored by, higher consciousness coming through, channeling through Jesus. That's the people that wrote the book. That's where they got that information. But initially, it was just drawing close into my relationship with God and listening a whole lot more instead of deciding on my own or with my own best thinking. The very first time when I was laid off from that position, I went straight to God because I had two little boys. They were 4 and 6. And all of a sudden, to not have my job and have a mortgage and my apartment and everything to maintain, it was just not a good time to be without my job. So I had to go straight to God. I had no big answers. And I said, God, whatever you want me to do, I will do it. I'm on your plan. And then within 48 hours, I had a severance check. Which I completely didn't did not expect. I was the CFO and we didn't have any money left. So actually the financing came from one of our affiliates. I didn't expect that at all. I was able to take the summer off, spend it with my kids. So all of a sudden, when I placed my well-being in God's hands, all of a sudden things started working and working very well. And I thought, well, that worked really good. So now I need to keep that up. And so really it was this relationship with God. But over time, it just became more personal. And then I've had a few experiences that felt very direct as Jesus talking to me. And so it became more personal. I do feel like it's all the same intelligence. It's not, any one thing other than there is a higher power and it's trying to love us and communicate with us and help us. So
I
that's how
love
it became
that.
personal over time.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I was raised in a very, so my mom was Buddhist once upon a time, but before I was born, she ended up converting to Christianity because she lived next door to missionaries over in Singapore. And so she brought that belief system with her into the US. And of course, told my brother and sister they needed to convert as well. And as young, impressionable children, that's what they did. And I think for many of us, when we grow up in a household that has any sort of like religious values or spiritual values, we do tend to take on whatever is showing up for our parents. And also, if you didn't grow up with any, and I've coming more and more into adulthood and having just a huge span of friends, I'm really recognizing just how many different kinds of beliefs there are out there and whatever label people put on them, right? Christianity, Catholicism, uh, being Muslim, whatever it is. At the end of the day, I believe what you just said is really spot on, which is there is this beautiful divine intelligence, whether we're calling it spirit or God or the universe. Everyone's got their name for it, and we're all creating that relationship with that same entity, that same intelligence, and just everyone's kind of going about it in a different way. And what I like to tell people is, I always use this dating analogy about how like I'm looking for my favorite flavor of gelato, and there's a lot of yummy flavors out there, and I'm willing to try them once in a while, but there's just one flavor that I know is the one that is going to be the one that sticks with me for until we're not better together. And so I think that it's the same in this light. It's figuring out you go on a path, and then through that path these things get revealed to you, and then you get the ability to like really come into your own relationship with
Mhm.
spirit, God, Jesus, name it, whatever works. And so I really think that's important, because I know that there were so many religious beliefs that were handed to me as a young impressionable lady, and there's some of them that I sat with for a while and I thought, I don't know that this rings true for me, and I'm trying to make it true. And so much of that was me trying to fit God into this box of what someone told me was God, and then getting a little older and having my own experiences, having my own relationship, having my own prayer time, my own talk time with God, and just life happening, and really zoning in and recognizing like, no, like this is just like any other relationship in my life where I get to have a very personal, like one-on-one with this entity. And it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same one for someone else. My relationship with my own mother is really different than my sister's relationship with my mother. And so it's just recognizing that and knowing that like there's some things to work through. So I'm so curious, because I think you mentioned A Course in Miracles. I'm so excited to talk about that today, because I think there are also people who go, oh, well, when she's getting these downloads, they're thinking that you're just talking about the Bible, but you're talking about A Course in Miracles. And so that's basically a download from Jesus. So let's talk about that, because I know that this book has changed so many lives. It's been such a catalyst for so many people I know in building their own spiritual relationship with source. And so I would love to know, like, how did you stumble upon it? How did you get into it? And then of course now you're like a seasoned, Course of Miracles theologian, for lack of a better, yeah, a better, description. And so tell us a little bit about that story, because I'm super interested on how you came upon it.
Well, as I said, my husband, who was my friend at the time, and he placed that book into my hands at my request, and we both just dove straight in, and we just talked about it
Mm,
for hundreds of hours. I mean, for
wow.
3 years, pretty much that's all we talked about. We both just really found it riveting, and it helped to answer so many questions. It's not meant to
Mhm.
replace anything. It's just a beautiful book that helps you understand how you got where you are and how to move forward. It helps you to bring down the fear in your mind, and the peace that we naturally have begins to emerge. And so he was the first one that gave me that book. But once I got a hold of that book, I was raised in Christian Science, but only as a child. And so I hadn't really been around it for maybe 14 or 15 years. As soon as I had my own kids, I think I started to feel more like the pressure was on me, that if my
Mm.
faith wasn't strong enough, that they might suffer for it in some way. So I think I backed away from whatever practice I had, because I just started being, the parent that tried to do everything right, and I kind of forgot my God connection in there. And so when all of these things happen, it really reignited this relationship that I wanted deeply to get back to. So, A Course in Miracles was a wonderful sequel to Christian Science. Christian
Mm.
Science for me was a beautiful practice, but it talked a lot about knowing the truth, and the truth will set you free. And as an adult, I started to think, but what if I don't know the truth? What if I don't have that kind of faith? As a child, I had that faith, and we had many miracles as I grew up in our home. My sister was healed of epilepsy in a day. I've had many healings in my childhood, but all of a sudden I became an adult, and the fear meter starts to come up a little bit, that you might screw it up, you might get it wrong. So it took this time to get back to that relationship with God. And then when he handed me the book, it said, well, yes, the truth will set you free. You don't have to know the truth. You have to be willing to know the truth.
Mm.
There you go. That sounds
Yeah.
wonderful. I can do that. I could be willing to know the truth. And I found that that willingness was everything. That willingness opened doors for me like no other.
Mm.
So that brought me deeply into the curriculum. I've been studying basically that book for 3 decades now, and I'm now getting ready to start reading some other things. But as I turned inward to hear that voice that is within each one of us, everyone has it. It took
Yeah.
a while to learn how that voice sounds, how you know when it's talking to you versus your own ego, your own mind talking to you, to
Yeah.
learn the difference. And the more I learned, the more I experienced, the more I wanted to learn. And so it's really been this journey of the book helping me to understand how to make those distinctions, and how to move out of that fear-based thinking, and to allow this higher consciousness that is one with us and always available. It's almost like having, an assistant with you that has every answer, knows everything about everyone all the time, and it can help you with anything. But I think we don't realize we have that resource available. And so the more you understand that resource is available, the more you want to know about that. And you allow that part of you to be very prevalent in your life, and things just work. They go
Yeah.
better. It's
Yeah.
easier. It's
Yeah.
less complicated.
Absolutely.
We're not as burdened. We're not as involved. We don't need to be. And then things
Yeah.
just start happening around you in a more natural way. And then I feel like our part is to not decide against our own happy outcome, whatever it is that we are working through.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. The way the Course in Miracles came to me was actually kind of backwards. And I say backwards then like I love how it was a referral for you, right? Of like, "Hey, I've read this really great book. Let me share it with you and then now let's do it together." That's beautiful. I love that. What would happen is I would share a philosophy or I'd share a download, and someone would say to me, "Oh my gosh, that's right out of A Course in Miracles." And I kept hearing that over and over again through the years. And I really never got back into heavier reading until these last couple of years. And it's been really amazing to watch life unfold and also to chuckle a little bit and go, wow, look, my own downloads that have come to me in my own spiritual practice without a book have shown up for me knowing that someone before me actually has had the same experiences because they shared the same belief systems and the same downloads they got long before I was even here, and they put it in a book. And now I can go back and read and kind of laugh and go, this is so true. So much of this has already been so true for my life, and I can attest to it. And I think that that part has been really fun, of being able to look back and seeing how dots connect versus learning something that's was handed to me that I was told to learn, but rather I'm already in the practice of something, and then something comes along to just reaffirm the beautiful miracles that are around us all the time. And I love to see life that way. I think that's always been, part of the vision, is to always see the miracle in everything, and everything, and just how life works. So for those out there, because I'm positive someone is feeling very conflicted right now with their own value and belief system, and they're like, I don't know, Robin, the Bible is the only book in the world for me. Like, what little message do you have for someone that is maybe feeling that conflict right now, that's coming up in their body?
Well, first of all, I think you have to honor what you're drawn to and what you feel in your heart. I go to Bible study twice a week, 2 hours a day. So I love the Bible. I feel like learning the history of the Bible and its importance and its relevance is so important. And I'm really trying to put all of it together in my mind. And it's been a fantastic journey. So I think when someone is concerned about somehow that this would get in the way of the Bible, I don't believe that it does. I think it's a beautiful complement. It's not meant to replace anything. It's just a book that helps you to bring down your fear. Think how much better you could even understand the Bible if your mind is not filled with worry or anxiety or stress. So a lot of what A Course in Miracles does is it helps you to turn inward, to listen to God's voice within you, so that you can know the difference, know when you're engaging your own ego versus the voice of that higher wisdom within you.
Yeah.
And so I think if anything, it's just a beautiful compliment. It's
Beautiful,
not
beautiful.
replacement. I don't know where that, it's kind of a myth that got started somehow. I don't know. Maybe it's because people found it so useful that perhaps there is a certain group of people that feels that what they were saying is this is the only thing and the only way. But it really is, if you have a book that's answering a lot of your questions, and if anything, it just draws you closer into that relationship with God. And God will reveal everything to us,
Right.
through the Bible, through these other books. There's only one true relationship in my heart that I really want to truly understand. And once you engage with that relationship, it's going to clear everything up for you. The closer you draw into that relationship with this higher part of each one of us, there's clarity.
Yeah,
There's not confusion,
absolutely.
there's not overlap, there's just clarity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's beautifully said, by the way. Beautifully said. I also think a great perspective shift for a lot of folks that are listening that might feel conflicted is, I want to give them a totally different example. So, for example, if your belief system that's been given to you is that the Bible is the only word of God, it's the only place to learn, then where does that leave space or not leave space for you to say, go and get a book on um, healing for trauma? That could give you some insights and could give you some wisdom that really apply to your life and help you actually work through trauma that you either did or didn't know that you had. Or think about, what if you're not great with your finances and you want to get some help in that area? Well, you can read the Bible cover to cover. Y'all have done it 12 times in my life. And I can tell you that although there's definitely some good information, the nuts and bolts about real estate investing or using insurance as a wealth vehicle are not in the Bible. And so, could you also go get another book that could supplement some wisdom, and then trust your knowing and your spirit to say, oh, this is wisdom that I can apply. And oh, maybe there's a parallel to a verse in the Bible, or maybe there's a parallel to something there that's giving you some wisdom. So I really want to throw that out there, because I think that will really help some people get a nice shift in how they might be feeling in their body. And I say this because I was one of those people that learned a lot about the religion that I was in. I learned a lot about Christianity. I went to a Christian school. It was reinforced all the time. And it was Bible studies and youth groups and outreach, and it was all of these things for a lot of years. And so with all of that also came with me my curiosity, which also said, I'm going to also trust myself and my wisdom, and in knowing that, like, look, if there is a God, I don't believe that God's leading me astray. So that's part of my own journey around that, and has really helped me come to where I am today, which is not so religious about anything in particular, but really tuning into spirit and encouraging people, like, hey, go get quiet with God on a mountain somewhere, and like that's what you want to listen to. And I agree with you, Robin. If it makes someone better to go to church every single Sunday in that same congregation and use holy water or whatever the ritual is, then do it. Be a better person, be a better human, do what feels good, and feels connected. And also, if it sets you free to not have to do those things and to be able to live your life and live peacefully, then do those things too. So I think that's the overarching theme here. Talk to me about how, when, because I've heard someone also mention A Course in Miracles can be a little hard to read sometimes. So what tips, what tricks, what advice do you have for helping people really settle in and be able to receive the message?
Well, I hear that a lot about how the course is hard to understand. And if I had not had my earlier foundation in Christian Science, I'm not sure that I would have understood it so well myself. But that really did help me a lot, because I already understood God's love. I already understood that healing was available. I already understood that miracles can happen. I had seen it with my own eyes. And so for some people, those things can seem so far away. Maybe they've never
Yeah.
seen a miracle. They think it just sounds kind of silly. Who could have a miracle? But I, through my own services that I offer twice a month on Sundays on YouTube, people can watch those events, and they usually get a miracle story along with it, and I give them great information about how they can do that themselves. And it's not us doing the miracle, but it's really about welcoming these shifts that help us to get to a healed experience. A miracle is the effect of understanding that what you are looking at is not the truth. And so once we open our mind to understand that we are not looking at the truth, we are looking at our version of the truth, and this is blocking the truth. And once we understand that, it really begins to open doors in our mind. So just what you were talking about before, that I think we all are seekers of truth in one way or another. We're always weighing out in our mind, do we believe what that person just said? Do we agree with what they said? Do we reject what they said? So I think
Right.
we're doing that from the moment we can talk, or even before. So I think we are seeking the truth all along the way. I also think that we come with the truth within us. I think it's part of us. It's part of our
Mm.
being. Now there's this other part that we have made up or added to. And so now we're kind of toggling between this truth that we know within us, and then this part of us that I call the made up self, or the false image. And so we get a little confused in that. But for people that are just trying to evaluate that and follow what they feel is right or true, the greatest thing they can do is get quiet, turn inward, try to put your thoughts of the day down for a few minutes, and ask your questions, ask for help. Along the way, I asked God to teach me about unconditional love, because I felt like I didn't understand it. I knew how to love people,
Mm.
I knew how to be loved. But I felt like in my own life that, if you didn't do a certain thing a certain way, or you didn't do what somebody wanted you to do, they might distance from you, or they might punish you, or they might withdraw.
Mm.
I felt like I wanted to understand this thing called unconditional love. And I simply asked God to teach me. And I feel today like I know what that is. I know how to share it. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. And I feel like I was taught. I was answered. So
Yeah.
if someone is just trying to find answers, I think our creator is a place for answers. And if we will not decide against that wisdom coming to us because we've been taught it can only come from here or only come from there, we can
Right.
certainly honor what we've been taught and the people that have taught us those things. Generally, it's out of love. They want us safe, they want us protected, they want to know that we'll be in heaven forever and they'll be there with us. It's for all the good and right reasons. And
Right.
then I do think that we are here to hear the truth in a way that it's meaningful to us. If someone just teaches you words and it doesn't quite sit with you or it doesn't feel quite right, I think it's a wonderful time to open your mind and ask for that clarification. And you might get someone saying a story in a certain way that helps you, or putting a book in your hands that really brings it on home for you. You might even hear a song on the radio, and there's the guidance that really helps you in that moment. One time I was driving along and I was trying to decide whether I would give away some of these household items or whether I would have a garage sale, which I don't like garage sales. It's my own thing. I think my mother took me to too many of them when I was a kid. So I just don't care for them. And I was thinking, well, I probably should sell these things. It would be a little extra money, but they were really nice household items. So I'm driving along and I said, God, should I sell these or just give them away? Do you want them to go somewhere? I just involve this higher consciousness as much as I can. And the next song on the radio was called Give It All Away. So I just
Oh,
started laughing out loud. And of course, that's what I did. But I think
yeah.
you'll find so much of the time that answers come in many forms, not to dilute any one book or any one place, certainly not. But I think
Yeah.
sometimes we need clarification. It's almost like if somebody speaks French and somebody in English is trying to answer them, they might need somebody that speaks French in a certain way to really hear that answer. So I think the more that we just welcome the truth and we continue to insist on the truth that we find we can resonate with and feels meaningful to us, I think the journey's not over. So welcoming the truth, and the truth is true, and you know it when you feel it and when you see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. When you think about your path, because you were this like powerhouse professional, and I feel like this is so many people I know, and I have to put myself into this category as well, who get to a point in their life where they feel like there's been a higher calling, and it's not that your spirituality has been separate from who you are, but it might be separate in how you make money or how you receive value. So I'm curious to know, Robin, what were some of the signs for you, and what was the maybe the final nudge that said, hey, like, you don't necessarily need to fully be this executive in any particular company anymore, but instead follow the path of spirituality and being able to share that with others. Like, how did you make that shift? Because I think so many times people's identities are very much caught up in the business that they're doing or have been doing, and so their idea to shift out of it and into something else, even though something else may feel more exciting, they may feel more called to it. Like, how do how did you make the shift? Because maybe that will inspire someone else who is also trying to make that shift.
I can actually remember the day that happened, the day, and even the time. It was a Tuesday morning, 10:30 in the morning, and I remember going into my husband's office. And at the time, I was working as a restaurant management recruiter so that I could work at home and be around more for my two boys that were young and after the divorce. And I also had my two foster daughters. So I had two foster kids. I had these four kids under my roof. And so I ended up picking a job where I could be with them more often. And I was also on this very accelerated spiritual path. I couldn't stop thinking about it. But all of that didn't happen right away. It was really through the teachings of the Course, A Course in Miracles, that helped my fear to start to come down. Because it's kind of scary to walk away from that career and the paycheck and the benefits and the certainty and into what you don't quite understand. But there was a day where I just knew that I needed to have faith, walk in that faith, and I wanted to go headfirst into my spiritual path, my holistic journey. It just felt right. It was like the fear had come down just enough to enable me to do that. So I walked into his office and I sat down on the floor, actually, with my back against the wall. And I said, I want to quit my job and I want to I want to go into this spiritual journey and I want to do it full time. And as he normally does, he said, sounds good to me. How can I help? You know, he's just so supportive in that way. And neither one of us were ready for that, but it was perfect and the timing was perfect. I would say for people listening, if they are in that place where they love the spiritual work, maybe they'd like to do healing work, but they're working at AT&T or, some place where they like those paychecks too, and they feel like they're toggling back and forth, but their first love is the healing work. And let that be exactly the way it is. Go ahead and do that for a while. It's a bit of a toggle back and forth, back and forth. And then there will come a time where you just know. You know that you're ready. You know that it's time. So I would say don't rush it. Don't try to stress yourself out into thinking, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. It's about really turning inward and into that inner compass. We all have one. Wait till it points north, and then you'll know it's time to go north, and you will feel it. You will know it with your whole heart. You won't be able to say no to it. That's how you know.
That's beautiful. I think it's such an individual journey also, right? I think there are those people who can do both and they can do it really eloquently and they've got the time and it works. And then I think there's other people who feel called to make the jump and to make the leap. But also that's part of their journey and their evolution is that was part of right practicing the faith of like, no, if I really believe that this is the path and I really feel like I'm called, then let me make the jump and let me make the leap knowing that there's a net there that I can't see right now and I'm going to trust that it's there. And that part I think it can be exciting for people but also really scary, especially if you are someone who has come from a background where you kind of expect, a check every 2 weeks and health benefits and time off and things like that. And for anyone listening that if this part is resonating with you, I just want to say that turning up your risk factor is like turning up your faith factor. They're kind of the same thing. And so
100%.
regardless of how you're looking at it, I want to encourage you that whatever is coming up for you, like just know that like if you fall face first, you can always get up and dust yourself off and start again. And if you're coming from, the world of jobs and 9 to 5s, and you're trying to shift out of that into what you believe is your purpose and your transformation and the way that you're really going to show up in the world, then let's just pretend that you can't figure it out or things don't hash out and you have to go back to work. Like that's okay too. Like it's okay that things aren't perfect because we all have to understand that all of these little boulders that come across our path sometimes are there for us. They're to teach us a lesson. They're to help us relate. They're to help us to encourage other people who are also experiencing boulders on their path of life, right? It's not all smooth sailing all of the time. And that's just life in general. I think entrepreneurs, I don't know, we got a special little piece of DNA that gave us like a little bit bigger of a risk factor and resilience factor that just helps us sort of plow through those boulders a little bit faster. But we all have them. And that's the truth of it is we all show up and have these things that show up in our life that we've got to be able to work through and work around, depending on what they are. So I love that. Robin, there's a really fun quote, and it's a testimonial that you got from one of your clients. And they said, learning from Robin is like riding a torpedo to enlightenment. And I love that. I think it's such a great testimonial. And when you hear that feedback, tell me, why do you think that they described you that way? Because I really think this will give people insight into what it's like working with you.
When I work with people, I already assume they are masters. I assume they get it. I assume they understand. And of course, they need to learn and remember and all that. But I always assume they already get it. And I don't mean that I don't explain things, but they know the truth within themselves. Sometimes they
Yeah.
just need someone to remind them of what they know. And then that's why it seems like such a quick ride, because instead of working with people and seeing them as somebody that's lost and really needs my help, and maybe they're way off track, I kind of see them as someone that is already whole, already loved, already safe, already brilliant. And all I'm doing is helping them remember this inner brilliance, this outer brilliance that they're already a part of. And so I
Yeah.
think that journey just doesn't take very long. I feel like the things that took me 3 decades to really get straightened out in my own mind, I'm seeing my own students really get this sometimes in 3 months, where they literally get it. And even when they ask me questions, they're already answering themselves before the question gets finished. And I just sit back and go, this is so great, because you know, it just took me so long to get the things that I feel that people get very quickly now. And maybe part of that is teaching, but it's really a remembering of what you already know. It's almost like a song that you used to know but you don't remember at all. Somebody starts singing a few of those words, and all of a sudden you find yourself singing along, and you're like, I know this song.
Yeah.
So I do believe it can be very fast, if someone is taking that leap, going from, let's say, the business world into the spiritual world. I would say, going back to those words of wisdom that I learned, is do not decide against yourself. When I sat there on the floor of his office and I went from, paychecks and all the good things and into this place that I didn't quite understand, I think I inadvertently decided my finances would be unstable, that things would get hard.
Mhm.
I didn't really know not to do that. I think I just
Mhm.
automatically accepted this is going to be tough. I'm going to have a lot of faith. I almost was putting on my vest to muscle up and make it happen.
Yeah.
I would have done that differently now, because I would just set my goal of the highest, most peaceful outcome. I would remind myself that my source is my creator, it's not me. And I
Right.
would trust the voice within me that's telling me this is time. And I would refuse to decide against myself. And I think it could have gone a lot easier on me, quite frankly.
Mm. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. That's such a beautiful share. This month of July, we have been celebrating freedom as our theme. And I would love to know, how do you define freedom in your own life?
I think freedom is when you literally have the feeling that you can do anything, not as a mighty person, but that you don't really have limits or bounds. And there's gravity, there's things that we have to pay attention to. But
Right.
honestly, even if right now, if I decided to be an astronaut, and I know I'm, later in life and all of those things, I think the first thing I would do is not decide against my own vision about that. And I think freedom is that power within us that we all have. And if we get in touch with that, it makes you feel like you really are free, free to choose, free to experience, free to live, free to love, that you don't have that constant nagging voice telling you you can't do it, you don't have enough, you're not being enough, you don't have the right background or the right resources. I've learned in this path how to quiet that voice, and those are the things that I love to share with others, so that whatever you are seeing or feeling in your mind that feels like the right next step, I think freedom is to know that you can take that step, and that step is actually very reinforced and supported by this higher part of us that loves
Yeah.
us completely.
So good. So good. Is there a particular practice? I mean, we've talked about, of course, reading and studying, and we've talked about prayer, but are there any other practices or techniques or frameworks that you've used that have really helped you tap into your, spiritual alignment so that you can feel braver and courageous and confident to step into those moments of freedom, the faith that it takes to do or not do, right? I mean, it really takes the same amount of faith to either do it or not do it. So why don't we talk ourselves into things more than we're talking ourselves out of things? So, like, is there anything in particular that you could, share with the audience today that might give them, that little shift or that little nudge of encouragement around really following their faith.
Sure. As I went through this journey, there's so many gems along the way, and I could probably give you, 20 different ways to, or more, of just taking it down to a nutshell. So I'm thinking of one right now that, I'm in the process of writing a signature course. It's called Ego's Playbook Online Course with the Answered Prayer Roadmap, and it's very involved. It's in depth, and I'm trying to put all my favorite gems in there. But one of those processes that's in this course is to boil things down to basically 3 steps. If something's happening that's really upsetting you or frustrating you, or you're feeling stuck, you're not moving ahead, or somebody's upsetting you, you can really think about these 3 steps. And I call it forgive, refuse, and choose again. Forgive, refuse,
Mm.
and choose again. So as you're looking at your situation or the person or whatever it is that's troubling you, making you feel stuck, the first thing before you can really have forward movement and get yourself unstuck is to forgive whatever and whomever you are judging.
Mm.
If you are judging this other person as being a detriment in your life, we have to just be willing, there's that word again, be willing to forgive them, not for what they're doing wrong, but to forgive them because you understand, or you will with practice, you understand that what your creator created within you cannot actually be altered by anyone unless you decide it can. So we're going to
Mm.
forgive them because in truth, you cannot be altered without your own consent. We're not forgiving the action. We're not condoning the terrible thing that they said or did. We are forgiving what happened, our experience of it, because that releases the effects of what happened that upset you. So we want to forgive the person. We want to forgive ourselves because we might think, well, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have been talking to that person. I did this to myself, all of those self judgments
Mm.
to forgive ourselves if there's self judgment going on. You can simply take out a tablet and you can say, who do I think is causing this problem? And there's your list of forgiveness. We might need to forgive God because we think God is turning a deaf ear and is not listening and not responding. And you've maybe been praying every night and nothing's happening. So forgive whomever and whatever you are judging, because this opens the space within you for a new and healed perception. The moment you offer forgiveness, it's like a karma neutralizer. It allows all the effects of the situation that is unpleasant to be undone on the spot. So forgiveness is number one. That second step of refuse, that means refuse to validate or reinforce the old story that you've been carrying around with you. If it's about the other person and they're just being very difficult or unpleasant, we're going to have to refuse that old story. You don't need to pour pink paint over it or see them as an angel, but refuse to decide against them. Refuse to carry that old story or their past. If it's an old story about you, maybe you think, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not safe, or I'm not supported, then write that down and look at that one last time and just say to yourself with conviction, I'm going to refuse that old story about what I am not. I'm just going to lay that down. I'm going to be willing to see that differently. So we're going to refuse to validate the old story, whatever that looks like. This is what allows your higher consciousness to have room, like floor space in your mind, so that you can have a new experience. So now we've done 2 steps to kind of back out of the problem or the illusion. And now the third step is where we redirect. And now we're going to pitch our fishing line over into that zone of truth. And I call that choose again. And choose again means now that we've forgiven everybody that we believe that has caused our problem, right? Including us, including God and the other people. We've refused to validate that old story again. We have this wide open space in our mind to choose again. And there's several different ways we can do that. I like to give out a lot of ways so that you don't get bored and your ego doesn't think you are predictable, that you can be a little, spontaneous. But a couple of ways that are really helpful is simply to make a reservation for peace. If you think, say you're going to a job interview and your old story about yourself is that you're terrible at interviews and you're probably not going to get this job, even though you're very qualified because you think you are lousy at interviews. So now you've got that whole story going on about yourself. So we have to forgive that old story. We have to forgive those old interviews where you didn't do so well. We have to forgive yourself for thinking that you don't interview well. So we're going to do all that forgiveness. We're going to refuse to validate that old story. Just think of, what is it that I'm carrying around with me against myself? Well, that I don't do well at interviews. Let's just refuse to validate that right now. Now we're ready to redirect and choose again. You don't have to say, I'm going to be great at this interview. I'm going to be great at this interview. You don't have to do all that because your higher consciousness is going to set that up for you. But what you must do is agree that you want a very peaceful, happy outcome. So you can say, I'm going to make a reservation for a very peaceful, happy outcome. And I don't know how, but I'm willing to be shown. And now higher consciousness gets involved because you have just agreed with the part of your mind that loves you instead of the part of your mind that doesn't love you. And now the outcome will be much different. So you can make that reservation for peace, kind of like making a reservation for dinner, only you're making a reservation for peace, you're calling ahead. And then the other way you can do it is you can say, God, will you decide for me about how this interview goes? I am not going to decide against myself. I am not going to use this time to, write out some sad story about how this will go. You can imagine just seeing a blanket in your mind, a white blanket. Don't put anything on the blanket. Just leave it blank. And you're saying, God, you decide what goes on that blanket. You decide about this interview. You decide about what I say and what comes out of my mouth and how this goes and who the other person is and where our conversation goes. I'm going to leave that with you because you have taught me that you love me and that you would only choose a happy outcome for me. So there's a couple of ways to choose again. But forgive, refuse, and choose again. Watch what happens. It's miraculous. And you're going to always walk away thinking, that went way better than I expected.
Yes, yes.
I think that's a real easy 1, 2, 3 process that will set you up for success really in any situation if you genuinely follow it and give it your best to lay that old story down.
Yeah, forgive, refuse, and choose again. Thank you for that, Robin. That's a beautiful framework. I do want to throw this out there because I literally just watched a video on I think the lady was talking about the idea of forgiveness and how we often hear the message that forgiveness is like a good thing, like it's going to lead to much more peace. And her unpopular opinion on this was that, well, not always. Like it helps. There might be a situation where it's really, really difficult to forgive someone. If someone sexually abused you for half of your life, like how do we walk into those situations that seem so heinously wrong and choose to forgive in those moments, right? Because yes, there is a story there and some of it is true. Now, there might be pieces of it that are extra or embellished, or they're how we remember them, or they're how we receive those traumas, but it doesn't make the kind of the bottom line facts of it true. So how do we walk into this idea of forgiveness when it's so hard to forgive, when there's been a betrayal, when there's been a, a big, it's a big, ugly
Mhm.
festering wound, and it's still hasn't even scarred over yet. Like how do we encourage someone that's in the depths of this non-forgiveness,
Right.
to have an openness to it, or would you say that there might be a time where forgiveness is not the answer?
All right. I love these questions. I love hard questions because it goes deep and then can really think deeply. All right. So when someone has been through something really traumatic, I call it the bear trap of the pain. It's almost like they're standing in a bear trap in the forest. And if I walk up and I say, if you'll forgive that bear trap, if you'll forgive this situation, you can walk on out of here. They'll probably think I'm crazy or I need medical help or something. But so they're probably not likely to even hear what I'm saying because the physical pain is too great. They just want that thing off, right? They want the pain addressed. So the first thing, and then when I work with any of my own practitioners that I teach all of these things as a career path. So I teach my own students that the first thing you have to do is you have to get that physical pain down. When someone has been violated, and I've worked with people that have been through things that I can't even fathom that they have lived through it and walked out the other side, you know? So people have been through heinous, horrible things. And when that happens, the first thing you have to do is you have to treat their heart. You know, you have to allow them to tell you about what hurt and what caused it, and let them show you the wound, and first address, I would say, the physical pain, because your mind won't let you think past it. How can you? I mean, somebody could be trying to share the secret to life with you, like, here's this one secret to life, it will fix everything. But if you're standing in that bear trap of the pain, you don't really care, you don't really want to know that. So I'd say the very first thing people need to do is let themselves be aware of what hurts, and try to get with somebody, some qualified practitioner that can help them to deal with that bear trap of the pain. That pain can come down in minutes. It has for me, it has for thousands of my clients. People don't even understand that relief is available. That emotional pain becomes physical, you know? You know, my own experience was I felt like an elephant was standing on my chest. I almost couldn't breathe at times because I had so much stress for so long that all of a sudden it was just pinching off my life force. And within one session, that came down about 75% when somebody else was helping me. And that's what really got me started, like, wow, that was so helpful. How can I help others with this? So the first thing is you have to address the emotional pain that has actually turned physical. And when you bring that pain down, then you start to have the conversation about forgiveness. And I try to help people understand it's not about forgiving the action of, you know, say somebody molested you or violated you or said something awful about you. It's not about forgiving the action. It's about understanding, and this is where it goes deeper into that spiritual growth and seeking the truth. But nobody wants to talk about that when they're in the raw pain of it all. So you've got to address the pain. You've got to get that pain meter down. But once the pain is down and you can have a deep spiritual conversation, we learn that everything we see with our eyes is actually mirroring our own thoughts and beliefs. And it's really hard to understand. You know, if you see an accident happen in front of you on the freeway, you feel like you have nothing to do with it other than trying to dodge it or help out on the scene. But we don't realize that the accident happening right in front of us actually has a lot to do with us, not out of blame, but out of our thoughts and beliefs, because that accident is going to happen as an effect of our own belief system. If we have a belief, not that we want to see accidents, you know, that's not the thing. But if we have a belief that people are careless, they don't do the right thing, they're not paying attention, they're not watching out for one another, that we're not safe, that we are vulnerable. Say that's something I'm walking around with every day. Well, having an accident happen right in front of me, I would get to be right about every one of my beliefs. Now, I won't like what I see, I don't like what I'm experiencing, but I actually get to be right about my belief system. So we want to look at that belief system and see, are these things we really want to carry around with us? Because if I feel at my core that I'm not safe wherever I go, then if somebody's going to get robbed walking down the street, it's probably going to be me, because I'm going to get to be right about not being safe. And I won't realize that I have anything to do with it. I've seen this happen where I've gone to a restaurant and I've been sitting at the middle of the table, and say there's like 10 people around the table. I've seen one person at one end of the table that says, this is the best restaurant. You're going to love this place. The service is fantastic. And they bring us all there. And then another person at the other end of the table says, oh no, I've been here before. This place is awful. I don't even know what I'm going to order because I'm probably going to screw it up. And you're going to watch exactly that. The person at the other side of the table, they're going to have a great meal. The best waiter happens to be the one serving them. The person at the other end, their dinner just got lost, and they can't remember what they ordered. Oh, I'm so sorry, it got served cold. Oh, you got a potato with that? Oh, I'm so sorry, I brought you the rice. And I've watched it happen right in front of me. So I think one of those things, once the pain is down, we start to understand it. Maybe we begin by understanding it's a collaboration, but really it is cause and effect. And it's a lot to accept that if we've gone through something terrible, that it's actually coming from our thought system. That comes later. Let's call that an advanced concept. But for now, we could say, would we be willing to consider that our thoughts do matter, and that we might just see what we believe in front of us or play out in front of us? It doesn't mean we're causing it or we are to blame, because it's projection. It's not the truth. So anyway, I think you've got to bring that pain down, and then you start talking about forgiveness, because you start to realize you have a role in what you're looking at. Not that you're asking people to hurt you, but there's a way to stop the pattern in its tracks once we start to realize our own power and the power of our own thoughts and beliefs. And we refuse to carry those with us. We go back to that second step, refuse to validate those old thoughts and beliefs. We don't have to be good at it, but if we're willing to say no to those old thoughts and beliefs, then our higher consciousness can intervene and show us how to be free of this, so it doesn't happen again. That's the goal, is to get the madness to stop. Not to
Beautiful.
blame.
Yeah, not to blame. That's beautiful. So beautiful. Robin, thank you so much for all of this wisdom today. I wish we had more time on the live call, but what's beautiful is you and I are going to continue this conversation over on the Mad Love Your Life show YouTube channel. And I'm excited about our next conversation. So for everyone on the live show today, I just want to thank you. And I want to say that if you want to get in touch with our guest today, please just check out the show notes, pop down to the comment section, and you're going to see all of the goods. You're going to find that free download of Miracles in Prayer book at freeprayerbook.com. And until next time, may abundance always walk beside you. May joy always go before you. And may love always guide you on your path. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. We air live every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Bold Brave TV. We hope to see you back next week. For more ways to connect with my guests, content, programs, and retreats, just head over to www.marydee.com and subscribe. That's MARYDEE.com.